Hello and welcome to this very special video for the upcoming Argent Arena. Since we're trying to get into more tournament stuff, we thought that it would be very interesting to bring you guys a cool analysis of what might be in store for the upcoming tournament, while also looking back at the previous tournament and using that to project. Now, who's this we, you might ask? Well, first of all, there's me, your host, Marco De Santos, also known as Mechanic Critic, and with me are two very special guests. First of all, one of the tournament organizers and also the previous tournament organizer. Give it up for Wind Up 13 Erd.
Hello, Marco. Thank you.
All right. It's Wind Up Bird, okay? I know what it means.
Yes, I was hoping.
All right, and the other tournament organizer for the upcoming Argent Arena in conjunction with Wind Up Bird, the ever amazing and ever fast Flash Hippie.
Hey there, Marco. How you doing?
I'm fine. Did I say your name wrong? It's Fast Hippie.
Yeah, whatever. It's good enough.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Tournament stuff. Isn't that exciting, everyone?
Absolutely.
I'm very excited.
Oh man, it's gonna be great. Okay, so here's the docket for all of you listening right now. First off, we're gonna look at the last tournament's top 4 players and check out their teams. Then we're gonna pick apart why their teams are the way they are. Then we're gonna compare what's different between last tournament and this tournament. So we're gonna be talking about some of the patch notes, some of the more important buffs and nerfs that happen. And finally, we're gonna be talking about how those changes might affect the outcome of the tournament and might even affect the teams that our players will bring. So let's start it off with the previous top 4 picks. Bird, I think, as the organizer of the last tournament, you would know this best.
Certainly. So the winner of the last tournament was Alifant. They used Schecter, Luke, and Kimbe. Second place was Jugan, or Walrus, as he is also known. They used Cadenza, Hikaru, and Kadath. Then third and fourth place were Charles, or Moon Knight, and Tyrankin. Moon Knight used Eligor, Riflim, and Magdalena. And Tyrankin used Rook, Riflim, and Magdalena.
All right, so that's the 4 top teams. Actually, between these 4, who did you guys expect to win? Like both of you. Hippie, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I looked at the top 4. I find this kind of interesting because I see kind of 3 team builds. You have Moon Knight and Tyrankin, which are both playing kind of late game teams with 2 escalation characters. And then Alphant, who's just kind of the best at always playing that move, the perfect move every time. And
Yeah,
Walrus's team to me is kind of it looks like the characters they know pick. So I mean, looking at these top 4, I mean, knowing now, I mean, obviously it was Elephant, but I mean, looking at this team, I would assume perhaps Walrus's team, only because it was so specialized, and if you have this skill, you can kind of use the advantage of your characters that have abilities that are much stronger, such as Kadath.
Yeah, I see. That's a very interesting analysis, and I would tend to agree. But before I say my part, what does Bird think?
My prediction, and it's easy to say with hindsight being 2020, was that Oliphant was going to take the first tournament. There were definitely many other strong people, but as I was watching the matches, as I was uploading them, they were just dominating and losing very few, I mean, beats even. So that was my pick there. Looking at the top 4 here, I think my finals I expected to be Oliphant and Tyrankin because I knew both players pretty well. I played against them and lost to them more than just about anyone else in the tournament. So I'd say the big surprise for me was when Jugan beat Tyrankin.
Oh, you think so?
In the semifinal match. That was a big shocker, but as someone who was also rooting for Jugan because I like Hikaru and he had the only Hikaru in the tournament, that still made me pretty happy.
Oh, well, at least your main got into the finals, right?
Definitely, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Excellent to hear. Actually, my prediction was always that Elephant or Charles was gonna win until I saw Charles's picks, and then I was like, Elephant's gonna win.
I think a lot of people were in that same boat.
Yeah, I mean, like it's really like it's really a thing of like I believe that Charles is the kind of guy who plays characters that he likes actually, because whenever Charles goes to tournaments, I kid you not, like whenever he goes to Worlds, Charles just comes in with the team he likes to play. He barely goes in with a team that goes like, oh, these are the top tournament picks, so I will pick them. Because Charles just always rolls in with like Tatsumi and then Tannis and then Sagas. Like he just picks a team filled with controllers and then just makes people sad. Like that's all that Charles does, and he wins tournaments off of it. So like I understand why Charles picked this team. Like he was also kind of like just playing some characters that he liked and found really interesting. But you know, Elephant is, you know, I always call Elephant a Spike because they're really the kind of person who's like, you know, why use this character if they're not in the top 5 kind of person, you know? So when I saw Elephant's picks of Schecter, Luke, and Kimbe, who were, in my opinion, some of the strongest characters in that meta in the last tournament, played by and piloted by one of the game's probably best players, because like, you know, I always brag about the fact that I have like 300 something games. Ali has like double my number of games.
Holy
like
moly.
That. Yeah, Ali has over 600 something games. And note, here's a cool piece of interesting trivia that many people might not know. Ali has never touched a physical game of BattleCon in their lives.
Wow.
Wow.
Never. Ali
So
only
many
plays
sheets.
online. So many sheets, so many play-by forums, so many TTS, so many BattleCon online. That's all Ali does. It's insane.
Well, and whenever you face her on the ladder, she comes up and you look over and her win percentage is like 83%, and you kind of cry a little bit.
I was gonna say my win percentage is about 25%, so that's just crazy to think someone can go 83% in something like this.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's insane. I mean, like, Charles has over an 80% win rate with Riflum. Riflum, guys. Come on.
Hashtag goals.
But really, we've touched upon this subject already, and I think it's very important to ask certain things. Like, we should really just pick apart why these people brought these teams. And how about we just go in order of like their placement? So who was 4th place? It was Tierenkin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So for 4th place, why do you think this team happened? Oh, Hippie already has something to say. Go.
Yeah, so I was gonna say both Moon Knight and Tirikin were the 2 teams that had repetitive characters, which were Magdalene and Riflum. And I think when you look at those teams, having escalation characters like that, you know, when you're at high level play, a lot of times, as you mentioned in some of your other videos, dodges are more common, deadbeats are more common. So if you can get to that later game, if you are playing escalation characters such as Riflum and Magdalena, I think it does give you kind of a, I mean, not a free walk, but it gives you a lot of advantage in that later game. And so I think both of these teams kind of take advantage of the fact that in these higher level games do have a tendency to kind of grind out to beat 10, beat 12. And by having these escalation characters, I think it gives them an advantage over teams that don't have escalation characters. So it is kind of interesting because given the diversity of the characters, and if we had all 16, you would see that, you know, the characters are all over the place. But these were the only overlaps, which were Magdalena and Riflum, which I think kind of points to the power of these escalation characters given the structure of a tournament.
Yeah, like it's also given the meta, right? Like given the type of players they were up against, especially in the finals. If you've seen those finals games, like Ali and Jugan dodge almost every single rotation, right? So it's like it's clear that that's the kind of meta that BattleCon Online has. How about you? How about you, Bird? What do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely think that the escalation characters help. I really agree with Hippie's point that when you have a lot of dodges, I mean, people like Riflum, Magdalena, and Luke, who is not part of these teams, but I think Ali brought him, really benefit from that.
Definitely.
I will say about those teams that I think both players wanted to bring Rifflem and Mags because they were very new in BattleCon Online. Rifflem is not in PaperCon. This is his real first appearance, so that's certainly very interesting. And Magdalena had just been released. So they both told me that they were interested in playing them for that reason, and were wondering if other people in the tournament were going to be playing them. Charles has gone on the record for me to say that he's very interested in playing characters that may not be played otherwise in the tournament to make character variety.
Okay.
Which is funny considering that he had the only characters that were actually...
Yeah, I don't think he was
in
expecting
top 4.
his group to have 3 Rifflems and 3 Magdalenas.
These Maggie and Rifflem picks are very interesting because by the time that Maggie was out, because it's important to understand also the context of this tournament, right? Because Maggie was just recently released, but at the same time, it was also found out that Maggie was decently strong. When she was released, Maggie was deemed to be top tier. In fact, Ali even considered bringing her instead of one of their characters. But Ali decided not to bring Maggie because Maggie was too new and Ali didn't have enough practice. So Ali wasn't confident in using Maggie. But had Maggie not been nerfed shortly after the tournament, Ali would have probably brought Maggie later on. It's just like that's crazy, right? Like Maggie wasn't just picked because she was just an escalation character and just because she was new. It was also because she was relatively strong at that point. I felt like Rifflem duplicated mostly because I think I agree with Bird here. Rifflem is new and he was very interesting and people wanted to see how he would function in a tournament, how he would work. And ironically, I guess, Rifflem worked out well because as much as we want to make fun of Rifflem, Rifflem did make it into the top 4 twice, right? So like, we can make fun of the win rates all we want, but Rifflem got into the top 4 twice.
And that means Rifflem had to win because I don't think Rifflem ever saw a ban, despite there being 3 of them.
He was never banned.
I'll have to check that, but there are a lot of Rifflem v. Rifflem matches on my channel. Thanks to this tournament.
Force your opponent to play Rifflem. That's a good strategy for the
on
tournament.
Jugin's stream, that's what he said. He said if I can get to Rifflem against Hurricane in the semifinals, then I've probably won that match, was his prediction.
Well, of course, because his team is really good against Rifflem.
Yeah, just straight up punching him in the face repeatedly before he can really region up. That's a good point.
Yeah, but here's a main point. You guys are talking to a Rifflem main. And
we are honored.
Let's just... Oh, yes, I am a god. No, just kidding. But I think a big misunderstanding from a lot of the players is that they think Rifflem's a escalation character, which is not entirely wrong, but that's like calling Luke an escalation character. But like, I know you just called him an escalation character earlier, but you don't really mean it like that, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
no.
He builds resources over time, but he doesn't work like Mags. Like if Luke reaches beat 15, he's not really that different from beat 1 Luke, right? He just probably has a bit more tokens or something. I feel like Rifflem is kind of like Maggie Light. Like, imagine Maggie starts at 1 and then builds up to 10, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have a feeling that Rifflem is the kind of character who starts at 4 and then builds up to 6.
Yeah, that
so,
makes
like,
sense. So he's more of kind of a mid-ranger instead of a late gamer.
And I think he's also a mid-ranger in terms of attack ranges too, which is one of his benefits.
Yes. We got a bit sidetracked there. Let's move on to... Well, I think Moon Knight and Tyrion can have similar teams. Let's move on to Walrus.
Well,
and,
one other point before we move on to Walrus. What do you think about Rukyuk and Rangers in general? I know if you look at Elephant's team, someone like Luke or Schecter, I think both of those characters can kind of be pushed around by someone like Rukyuk. Do we think that Rangers are a good pick against some of the options? I don't know about the top 16 or the 16 last tournament, how many Rangers we saw, but how do you think Rangers fit into a tournament setting like that? Is it too hard to push around these top players?
What do you think, Bird?
Certainly. I think Rook did really well for Tyrankin this tournament. He won his game against Jugan with Rook, for instance. And I think that was against the Kadath? I shouldn't be talking things I don't know, but I feel like Rook had a lot of good matchups that other characters did not. For instance, even though he's a ranger, he has a great matchup against Cadenza. And I think people were expecting a lot of Cadenzas, and rightfully so. I feel like Rook is okay against Schecter, and his pushes are quite good against Kimbe if he doesn't just get flat out, you know, destroyed by Kimbe's high damage with a few good reads, which I think happened a few times to Rooks in the tournament because Tyrankin was not the only player using him. Luke, I think, is quite strong against Rook, though, because he has so much start of beat advance. So it's really hard for Rook to keep Luke out if Luke wants to be in. He's basically in that matchup.
Luke is absolutely one of Rook's worst matchups, and probably is, I would say, almost as bad as Alexian. And that's a big say, right? Like,
jeez, so somewhere between Alexian and Hekech.
Yeah. Oh, ironically, Hekech isn't as bad as you think it is.
Oh.
Right.
I need to look into that. That was one of the first games I played, and it made me very sad.
Rangers have their place, and they can have really good matchups, but across the entire board, I feel like Rook's a bit not on the good side. Because when he has positive matchups, let's say against really short-ranged characters like, I don't know, Hikaru or maybe even Cadenza, right? Like, one might imagine that Rook should dominate these games. Sadly, though, he has an advantage, but it's not crushing, right? Like, he doesn't queue into this character. He doesn't queue into a Hikaru and go, yes, instant win. He just goes, this is my game to lose. Like, I'm winning by default, but if I mess up, I can still lose, right? That's how it goes.
True, there's a lot of room for error on Rook. That's a good point.
Exactly. Because you anti-ammo wrong once, you are dead, basically, most of the time. But on the other hand, his bad matchups are like crushing. Like if he gets up against a Luke, there's really not much he can do because Luke will just teleport into his minimum range all the time. There's also Karen who can just feral into his minimum range all the time, or Full Moon into his minimum range all the time. I don't feel very confident in bringing Rook-Yuk to tournaments, like if I were to choose it, because I feel like a lot of Rook-Yuk has a lot of room for error, like you said. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, it's just not quote-unquote worth the risk. His pros are almost never outweighed. Like, his cons almost always outweigh the pros. Because if you wanted to play a ranger-ish character, you could literally just play Kimbe. I feel like Kimbe would just do Rook's job, but like 10 times better, because she could just quake you, right? Like,
yeah, no, she has a lot of plus range on her styles for a brawler.
Yeah, so talking about characters that are swingy, if we go to Walrus's team, he had Cadenza, Hikaru, and Kadath. When I look at this team, both Hikaru and Kadath seem like characters that can be very powerful and have extremely powerful abilities, but also can, if you make a bad call, just be absolutely terrible. Especially with someone like Kadath, if you misplace your trap and your opponent ends up on the other side of you, on the other side of the trap, and it takes you like 3 beats to get set up again. I just, yeah, that's kind of how I see that lining up. So why do you think that Walrus or Yugen had such success with this team that I feel has some characters that are so swingy?
Does Bird have anything there? Or
yeah, sure. I can go first. I was looking at Walrus's team a lot. As you said, it has interesting characters. It has Hikaru, who is one of my favorite characters and love to see used well. So I started doing a lot of analysis about this team during the tournament and before this, just to hear Marco, you say he played these characters because he is comfortable with them. And I think that is a huge point to their success.
Why do you think about that? I think there's a question that we have to put forth here, right? Like, when picking tournament characters, is it always best to pick the toppest tier, right? Like, to me, in my opinion, it's okay to pick the toppest tier, but if you can't execute, there's no point in picking the toppest tier.
Definitely. I've built some tournament teams for myself, but I haven't really entered a full tournament myself, so I'm not the best person to talk about this. But in my experience, I try to keep a balance of players that I really like. So someone like Hikaru or Kalistar would definitely be in my 3. And then I'd look to see who they're weakest against. And let's say, for instance, Hikaru really dislikes playing Cadenza. I'd want to make sure I have someone that's good against Cadenza. And if that's someone who I'm not necessarily great with, but is a great character, I'm really happy to bring them. You know, not only would the tournament help me practice with that character, but it could scare people away. So I think comfort is very important. I think, as you said, if Alifant has somewhere of 600 games, it sounds like they would be comfortable with just about anyone in BattleCon Online's roster, which I think would be very beneficial for the people that have so many games, are just so familiar with BattleCon and its gameplay system that they can play just about anyone.
Well, I would say it's sort of a combination both ways. It's not even if you're comfortable with the character, but if you're comfortable playing against the character. And I think Kadaf is probably the best example of that. If you've never played against Kadaf before, it feels so bad sometimes. Like,
yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked to hear that he is considered a low tier character, because I find Kadaf can just be so dominating if you mess up against him. And so interesting for what I think of as kind of a brawlerish character.
Oh, thank you. Oh, my heart blossoms. How about you, Hippie? What do you think about this team? I mean, like, you say it's swingy. You say it has some problems. What do you think? Before I give my answer, what do you think?
When I look at this team, I see, with Hikaru and Kadaf, I see two characters that, if your opponent calls you, if you're Hikaru and you play a couple of your major tokens and you're not able to recover because your opponent's dodging you and avoiding getting hit, or if you're Kadaf and you drop your trap and your opponent dodges you and gets behind you, it just, to me, when I look at both of those characters, they just seem like characters that, yes, they can do some amazing things. Like, Hikaru can just get his +3 power and just out-trade anybody, or get his soak 3 and out-trade anybody. But if something happens and you make a bad call, I think you can punish these characters really hard. You know, if Kadaf has the trap in the wrong place, he might take 2 or 3 beats to get back into a position where he's comfortable, and in the meantime, you can just kind of wail on him. And so that's kind of what I see with this team is, I guess, if you play them well, which I assume Walrus does, and you're able to basically play your team better than your opponent can play against you, then I think this team has that advantage, just because these characters are so swingy. But at the same time, if you play against someone that is comfortable playing against Hikaru or Kadaf, I think this team is just not basically generally as strong, because they can be read pretty hard.
Yeah, I think I agree with, like, both of your sentiments, right? Like, this is a team that Walrus is comfortable with, but it has its big weaknesses, right? In the sense that these teams can be very swingy. If you read right, it's like, oh man, I just got a +8 trade. If you read wrong, it's like, oh man, why am I playing this character, right?
Yeah, and in some cases, though, I feel like, I don't know, I can't say that's beneficial for a tournament, but if you have enough experience to make those reads, like, I was very impressed by Walrus's Hikaru play. I looked at it a lot when I was learning the character for BCO, and I think one of the reasons for that was he was so focused on regaining those tokens. Something, as you said, Hippie, when Hikaru does not have tokens, he is not a good character. And he was using Palm Strike almost every rotation, and a whole lot of using Fire. Not always hit confirmed by Geomantic, So I feel like he was playing a very aggressive Hikaru with a lot of start of beat movement, which is something that kind of I shy away from. I don't want to shy away from it, I think it's strong, but I always feel with Hikaru's range and hit confirm, oh no, I've advanced too much, what will happen now? But, I mean, Walrus just got in their face. I think he played a confident Hikaru as someone who knew the character, and he ended up winning. I mean, he beat a lot of Rifflums. I think that's a really good matchup for Hikaru, but he also beat a Cadenza in the tournament, which I was quite impressed by.
Okay, here's my turn to interject.
Please.
Hikaru. So I mean, not to say that you guys are wrong. I just don't feel that Hikaru against Cadenza is as bad as you probably think it is.
Yes, I'll say that Cadenza is sort of my white whale character. Someone who I definitely tilt against more than anyone else. So definitely take any analysis I do with Cadenza with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do I put this? I'm not the best Hikaru player in the world, right? Like, you saw that last episode of Making Connections.
Oh, don't be so hard on yourself.
I am, but here's the dealio. It's like, I feel like that matchup's not as bad as some people think, because if you just look at the raw numbers, once Cadenza drops Clockwork, Hikaru wins every single trade.
And honestly, that happened in the match that I saw. If you look at Walrus's match versus Hippie, that he was able to predict the Clockworks and then trade positively. So that's a really good point.
Here's one point that I might want to bring up that probably you two haven't mentioned yet. I mean, you guys haven't actually mentioned it on the show. But I think that this team does well, and that Jugan or Walrus was able to do well in this tournament because this team plays off the meta.
Do tell.
So, Hikaru and, well, maybe not probably the best example being Hikaru, but Kadath is a really good example of this. Because Kadath, as far as I know in this point in time of the tournament, was the only character to have like a above average matchup against Schecter. Aside from Cadenza. Cadenza and Kadath are both really quote-unquote good Schecter picks. Schecter counter picks. So no matter who Elephant banned between the two, at least one of the matchups would be positive against Schecter. Which means that you can ban another character. What really troubles me is that in the finals though, Jugan decided to ban Schecter.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, because Jugan had two of the best Schecter counters on his team. So I don't know why he didn't just ban Luke instead, and then hopefully win the Kadath versus Schecter matchup.
I wonder if that's sort of an autopilot. Like, Schecter is arguably the strongest character there. I mean, Luke probably is stronger, but Schecter is definitely more intimidating.
So yeah, I mean, like, in this, at the end of it all, I feel like this team played off the meta really well, even if Walrus wasn't intending for the team to do so. And I find that probably carried a bit of the games, especially with, you know, Kadath and Cadenza technically covering the same amount of things, but differently, because Cadenza was able to like deal with brawlers by out-brawling them, and Kadath was able to deal with brawlers by limiting their movement and their hit confirm. So I think that's a big thing about this team that we didn't see until we had hindsight. So speaking of, you know, Schecter, let's go to the final team.
All right.
My team, my favorite team, Ali's team, has Schecter, Luke, and Kimbe. Hippie, what do you have to say about this team?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I look at this team, the first thing that jumps out to me is that all three of her characters were brawlers, which...
you mean, no, that applies to everyone's team.
Well,
everyone's team was comprised of brawlers.
But I just thought that was interesting because, you know, most of the other teams, I mean... The only other in the top four that had a brawler was Hikaru on Yugen's team, and so I don't know the brawler heavy tactician thing, but I mean, why do you think having the brawlers gives Elephant an example, and does brawlers play into her style, which is this kind of trade every turn, trade up every turn kind of style? Is that an advantage that brawlers have? I'm just trying to understand why she would pick a team that's brawler, brawler, brawler. I mean, they're also some of the best characters on BattleCon Online. you know, they're what I would say top tier. But I guess my question is there some inherent advantage of playing brawlers all the time when you want to play that kind of trade every turn kind of style that Elephant plays?
Yeah, I think this would be a really good time, or correct me if I'm wrong, Marco, this could be a good time to talk about what brawler means and kind of how it spiraled into the meme it is.
It's not a meme, okay? It's legit. All characters are brawlers.
Forget me.
They fight, okay? So they're brawlers. So this is just some insider developer stuff. These categories are useful for beginner players. In general, these categories are actually really wide, you know? Like, Brawler has both Kimbe and Schecter and Hikaru, and these three characters, to anybody who's decent at BattleCon, play nothing alike. Absolutely nothing alike. But all in all, if you look at them at the superficial level, all of these characters do one thing. They get in your face and they punch you. No special tricks. They just kind of punch you and stuff. And in a game like BattleCon, where card lock is a thing, man, this is some high concept BattleCon, but like card lock, you know, wherein like if you drop a style, that style goes out of your hand, right? And you can't use that. And you get into situations wherein you could possibly do something in this situation, but the cards are in your discard, limiting your options. And because your options are limited, it heavily affects the way your character works. Many specialists, tacticians, and stuff, they can pretty much do a lot of stuff, but once one of their styles drops, it limits a lot of what they can do. For example, the moment Karen drops her full moon, her ability to instantly teleport across the board is now gonzo. And that's not something your opponent has to worry about anymore. Brawlers, on the other hand, tend to have samey styles. Like, if you just look at Kimbe, all of Kimbe's styles are just this. This one's a little bit fast, this one's a bit fast with movement, this one's slow and has damage, and this one's slow, less slow and has a little bit less damage. But all in all, there's no tricks to them. They're just all a bunch of good statted cards that are spread over a various amount of stats. Look at Hikaru.
And Hikaru, I think, is the best example of that. Yeah.
Right? Like, look at Hikaru. Focus is just slightly fast with stun guard. Advancing is slightly fast with movement and power. And then sweeping is really fast. And then Geomantic is, you know, it has a lot of stats because you can anti-extra tokens on top. And Trance is regain tokens. But all in all of these things are just, I will hit you with a varied amount of stats. Like, there is no effect that goes like, your opponents cannot switch sides with you, or your opponents cannot move over this space, or attacks at range something can't hit you. Like, all of Hikaru's attacks kind of do the same thing. They are honest attacks. And this is something that brawlers really are good at, because card lock is barely a thing for them. Because when one of their options goes down, it's like, okay, I just can't be fast this beat, but they can still pretty much do what they usually want to do to you. And that's what makes brawlers really powerful in a game like BattleCon Online, especially in a tournament setting, because card lock is atrocious. Like, the moment Kadath loses Blight or Evacuation, he loses a lot of his power. Like, because the moment Evacuation is down, you can drive onto his trap and not worry about it. Brawlers don't have this problem, and that is a big advantage that they have. Aside from, obviously, the fact that these three characters are, like, the toppest tier characters. Elephant themselves said that the way they play this game is kind of like the way they play Seth. Seth is a controller. If he were in BattleCon Online, he'd be classified as a specialist. In my opinion, he would be like the epitome of brawler, because even though a lot of Seth's tricks in the end of it all are kind of like, you know, this one lets you dodge at range 4, blah, 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 blah. Seth basically plays whatever the heck he wants, and it's your job to figure out the way to beat it. That's how brawlers work. They will play a thing, and then it's your job to figure out which one of the things they're playing and figure out how to beat it. Because the biggest benefit of a brawler is this. You always have 4 styles and 5 bases in hand, right? By default, you think that's 20 options. But for most characters, it's actually a little bit like half of that, because some of their styles don't mesh with specific bases, right?
Yeah, Karen is definitely the best example of that. Like, if you're standing on the wolf, then she might have 1 or 2 styles that does anything.
I just feel like brawlers, or in general, at least these 3 characters. Okay, let's settle this debate. At least these 3 characters kind of work that way. You know, their options are hardly limited by what cards are in their discard. And even then, their cards are just that powerful. Mix that in with Elephant's ability to play attacks that are super, super good in the situation you're in, and you have a recipe for a win. And in fact, Ali did win. So congratulations, Ali. And I hope you, as a tournament organizer, Bird, were satisfied with the result.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always pretty nerve-wracking to set something up like this because there's so much... people are in different time zones. They have to, be on the same time to play. Something could come up in their day-to-day life. And just to have a game where so many great matches were played with limited amounts is not only great for me, but, is why I want to run another tournament. And now this one has the Argent Arena, as we call it, has 16 players in it. So I think that's going to be really exciting, but as the tournament organizer, I'm also terrified of what might happen.
How do you feel, Hippie? You're also a tournament organizer for the Argent Arena. How do you feel?
Well, I'm super excited. I'll be going through the videos and posting stuff. And when I looked at the last tournaments, there was a lot of amazing matches, a lot of really close calls, a lot of really interesting things that happened. And I'm just excited to be able to watch the matches and talk over them and analyze them. And I'm so excited. The whole reason I started recording is because I just like watching games, and there really wasn't any other videos available to watch games. So a lot of times I'll record games and then I might come back and just watch them later because I just like watching the games and understand what I was thinking and try to get better in that way. So I'm super excited just to sit down and have more games than I can possibly watch waiting for me.
Yeah, no.
Nice.
The first round is definitely going to test us in a good way.
And it played by some of the best players in the game and Brad.
We got Brad.
Yes.
This is going to be so fun.
Oh my gosh. For all of you who didn't know, Brad is in this tournament. I just don't know what Brad's going to do. Like, none of his mains are in the game yet. So. Oh my gosh. I just got wait. Speaking of the Argent Arena, though, let's stray our course to this. This tournament is going to be very different. This new tournament, this Argent Arena, is going to be very different from the past one because there's a huge list. There's at least been what 3 patches since the last tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go over some of the changes that are going to happen, that have happened between Bird's BattleCon Brawl and the Argent Arena. I mean, I'll talk about some of the major ones, or do you guys want to talk about the major ones and I'll do some of the nitty gritty?
Well, let
sure.
me start with the obvious one. The obvious one is we have several new characters, right? So we have Marmalade, we have Caesar, and 7 is now available. Am I missing any characters?
Mikhail.
Oh yeah, Mikhail will be coming too. And as we saw in the last tournament, characters that are pretty new, people will be playing. So I would definitely expect to see a lot of Marmalade and a lot of Mikhail, even though people have, not a ton of practice with Mikhail, but, they'll have the new shine on them. So you definitely got to play them.
Wait, why didn't you mention Cesar?
Oh yeah, and Cesar as well. I mentioned Cesar, Secar.
No, but you said expect a lot of Marms and then expect a lot of Mikhail, but not a lot of Caesar.
I mean, he's like so 2 months ago, Marco. I mean, come on.
Oh my!
He's old news.
He's like so last season. No, but seriously though, do you want to get into the nitty gritty, Bird, or do I kind of get into that?
I mean, I feel like you would definitely be much better at it. I'd say something else that might lead to some changes is that it is not a round robin or World Cup style tournament where people need to, play a bunch of games in a group and then go to a knockout stage. the Argent Arena is going to be 16 players in double elimination, a double elimination format. And I think that can have some changes on it as well. There's going to be more, I think there's more room for error. I mean, you have to win about as many games as you did in the previous tournament. I was crunching the numbers there, but you definitely have to be on your game a lot more, I think.
Oh, right, because it's more punishing to lose.
Yeah, and you don't really know who you're going to go up against as easily as when you're given, you know, the 3 people that you will be playing games with no matter what, and you don't have as much time to
because in the round
really
robin stage you could lose 2 and win 2 and then make it to the finals, but in this stage if you lose 2 you're just out.
Yeah,
so
kaput.
That's gonna change a lot of things. It's like it's not gonna benefit a lot of people who are slow starters, and it's also not gonna benefit a lot of people who are out of practice. And it's also not going to benefit people who have teams that have really bad matchups. Like, if you get matched up with some... Like, for example, if your main player is Rook and you get matched with somebody as Alexian, it doesn't matter how well you do against the rest of the bracket. You get knocked out at that point. Like, oh, that sounds rough. That'll change a few things.
I mean, it'll still be... We're still doing the team of 3 ban 1 and best 2 out, 2 out of 3, but... Yeah, in the general sense, if you lose two matches, you're just out.
Oh man, okay, that's interesting. We'll talk about how those changes can affect the tournaments after that point, after we go through the rest of the changes. So, obviously, new characters. But here's a few of the more interesting changes that are going to happen, or have already happened. Number 1, Schecter got nerfed. And then she was nerfed too much, so she got buffed. But she's still overall nerfed compared to the previous tournament. All in all, her biggest tools are now, like, less safe. So thank goodness. Specifically, I keep forgetting the name. Jugular is now not as good as it used to be, because instead of regaining up to 3, it now just regains 1. Oh, thank you. And I think she also received a slight nerf to Combination's power. Combination doesn't have a lot of power anymore. -1 power overall. So that's it. There's also a few other changes to characters. So Marmalie came out, and she was a really strong contender in the ladder. She has a really, really good win rate. So we had to nerf her too. She's losing a lot of her soak. Her finisher, Astral Trance, is going from soak 5 to soak 3 SG2. And then her meditation is losing its natural soak 1. So meaning if you want to soak anything with this, you have to spend counters. Who else got drastically changed? Oh, and in the latest patch, we have 3 really interesting changes in my opinion. Number 1, Kadath is getting a buff. So that low tier status might not stay low tier for long. Kadath can now more reliably deal with the characters he has the biggest problem dealing with, heavyweights with soak, because his snare base now always ignores soak, rather than only ignoring if the opponent is on the trap. What else? Oh, here's a big one. Cadenza's getting nerfed, guys. Hydraulic went from power +2 to power +1. That's a huge nerf, because now Hydraulic only has effective power +2 because it has soak 1. And that's a really big thing, because Cadenza's biggest tool is doing stuff like hydraulic shots and hydraulic drives to get in on you while dealing some significant damage.
Well, and most importantly, Seven's absorption style is now super awesome. Before it didn't prevent down to 4 damage. It was just you took like a bunch of damage and get stunned, and that was it. So 7 is at least, I would say, playable now.
Yeah,
also, in the last tournament, 7 wasn't playable due to a bug. So I don't know if we'll see any 7 players. If there are, I will. I'll root them every single round, and I will record you as much as possible. But yeah, 7 is at least playable, I guess, now. But she's still quite a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, absorption base is really, really good. Like, by default, it's a heal too. on like dodge beats, and then if she gets hit, it's still like even trades at least. So great, crazy base. And what's the last change? Oh right,
Luke?
I remember the last change. Oh yeah, there is that too. Luke got nerfed as well. His chrono goes down from being able to spend 5, that means any number of time tokens, down to 3 time tokens. So this might make Rangers a little bit happy because Rukyuk now no longer has Luke instantly becoming melee range, even from range 5, because Luke just decides to chrono once. So there's that. And okay, so I guess I miscounted my number of changes because there's also one more that I feel like is very huge. Like, huge. But this is because I'm a main. Rifflem got buffed, boys!
Let's go!
Yes. Let's go! Rifflem got buffed. His install regain reagent went from on hit to end of beat, meaning that it's guaranteed to regain every single time.
Marco, let's be serious. You'll still never play install.
That's where you're wrong, my friend.
I don't know about that.
It essentially accelerates Rifflem's escalation by an entire rotation. That's cray-cray.
But at the same time, you're going to have to make a good call with your install, hopefully catching their dodge or putting them into a position where you can either dodge them or trade. Because, you know, the tricky part with install is that it is speed too. So a lot of times it's hard to play install safely without just getting crunched in the face.
Bodied.
Well, welcome
Not
to
getting
playing
bodied.
7.
Give it that stun guard, though. Rifflem's got quite a bit of that.
Yeah, so you can experimental install to give yourself a stun guard 3 or possibly stun guard 5 install if you anti SG stun guard on it, FG stun guard on it. You can also give it priority. You can also give it a bunch of stuff. It's really crazy because here's the thing. Like, I understand that there's a considerable risk, right? Your opponent can easily just break through that stun guard and stun your install out and you like lose 3 life. But at the same time, in my firm opinion, losing 3 life is worth getting a reagent back. Like, that's how crazy the reagents can be. And I haven't really tested it out a lot, but I feel like if there are Rifflem players out there waiting for their chance, and if they've had enough practice with this new install, it might just be the catalyst for a new line of Rifflem play. But we'll see. I mean, like, I'm obviously biased the same way Hippie's biased towards 7, the same way Bird's biased towards Hikaru. We all love our mains a bit too much, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Okay, which brings me to the last question. How do you guys think that these changes will affect our picks?
Well,
we all have our own predictions.
One thing that I would say, and I'm kind of, as we would go through this conversation, is I think we expect that Marmaley will show up a lot, and perhaps kind of the answer to doing something different is to do the same. And what I mean by that is, we talked earlier on about escalation characters, and perhaps an escalation character would actually be a really good pick against someone like Marmaley that just wants to kind of stretch the game out. I mean, Marmaley could stretch the game out all she wants if I get to a level 4 or level 5 Magdalena and then like Supernova crunch her face. So, I mean, I know that Marmaley can dodge for a while, but if I'm killing you every turn, good luck on that. So maybe that is one way to go, is to again think about those escalation characters, especially Magdalena, if you're going to see a lot of Marmaleys. The other character that I really like, and maybe I'm crazy saying this, but I think Kalistar might be a really good pick, and the reason I say Kalistar is a good pick is because Kalistar is flexible in that she can rush down escalation characters by going to her flame form. If you were playing Rifflem and I go to flame form Kalistar, I can just kind of melt your face off.
I'm sad.
And then at the same time, Kalistar can actually play the role as a ranger. So if you're playing against someone like Cadenza or someone else that likes to play close, you might be able to take advantage of that by playing the role of a ranger. So I think Kalistar is also a pretty good pick.
I definitely expect to see some Kalistars. I was pretty shocked that there were not any in the previous tournament, and I think you bring up a good point, how she may be even better than she would have been in that meta.
How about you, Bird? How about any other predictions from you?
Certainly. How the tournament will go, or specifically how the changes will affect them?
How the changes will go. I mean, like, we can't tell the future.
Oh, of course. Well, although if anyone listening feels like they will make some good predictions, I can quickly plug in that until the tournament starts on Friday, they can either see other people's predictions or make their own, sort of like a March Madness thing going on. So I think it's really fun to see what people are thinking of the tournament in that prediction sense. But to get back to that question, I'd love to see Mikhail be a factor in this tournament. We won't know if there's bugs with him, or I don't know how many people will be used to Mikhail, but he's just such an intimidating character to go up against. He has, 2+3 styles, some that can hit just as hard, if not more, based on whether he's hit, lots of soak, lots of stun guard. I feel like Mikhail is sort of the second level of Hikaru. Like, you have to manage a lot of resources, but if you do that right, oh, it's so frightening. I'd love to see Mikhail make an impact in this tournament. Even someone like Marmally, someone like Cesar. It's going to be interesting to see. With 16 players, there's going to be a lot of different play styles, and a lot of people playing the tournament for different reasons. Like, I feel like, as you said, Alifant, they built their team in the previous tournament as, these are the strongest characters, I play well with them, let's go. And then we have someone like Charles, who picked characters he didn't think would be in the tournament. So we're going to get a lot of variety like that, and I think that's going to lead for some really exciting matchups and maybe some surprises as well.
Yeah, talking about Caesar, I mean, do we expect to see any heavies at all in the tournament other than Cadenza? I mean, I think people like heavies are somewhat are, I guess, by nature predictable, which is why we don't see them at high level play. But I mean, Mikhail might see some play.
I definitely expect to see Cadenza, even with the nerf, just because there's a few players that I know enjoy Cadenza in the tournament. Mikhail, I would consider a heavy because all of his soak and stun guard, but he also has some +1 styles and some tricky dodges, so would you consider Mikhail a heavy? Probably.
It's hard to say. I mean, like,
he's just good, but can't be good every beat.
I mean, like, I'd call him a heavy. I mean, like, Alexian's a heavy. He has a +1. And Cadenza's a heavy. He has battery. So, I mean, you can call him a heavy. I think his only +1 is hollowed, right? So I think it's fine.
I think Sacred
and
is
Caesar's
also
a heavy, and he's always slow.
Yeah, but he's so sticky.
He has sticky. I mean, they already nerfed his stickiness, right? Like in PaperCon, he's way more sticky.
Yeah, he was someone I was surprised when I heard that he would be entering the game with nerfs, because I think at the very beginning, I think he was considered a very weak character because of dash. And then when dodge changed, I think that made a lot of people, sort of like me, who can't analyze the game at a really high level, think that Caesar was great. Then I heard he wasn't. And then right before he came out, I heard they were nerfing him a lot. So I think he's in an interesting place. But because his theme music, I think, is so good, I really hope to see at least one. They will definitely be recorded.
Oh man, I love his song. I love the theme music for Caesar. It matches him entirely, perfectly, in fact. So you want to hear about my predictions? Actually,
Please.
I think to answer your question, Hippie, let's give my prediction. So, what do I think about heavies entering the tournament? I feel like it's very likely, but at the same time, unlikely. Dun, dun, dun. So, why is it more likely? Schecter's fallen from grace. In fact, Schecter is probably no longer top tier. So why would that affect the heavies? Because Schecter is the anti-heavy character in the game. Like, she exists solely to make heavies sad. Like, I feel like that's all Schecter does, is make heavies really sad that they exist. In fact, Schecter makes Cadenza feel sad. So, like, just let that cook in your head. Like, I did say that Cadenza does somewhat okay against Schecter, but even then, right? Like, if Schecter just gets a few reads, it's a sad game. Either way. So, with Schecter gone, heavies have a lot more space to maneuver now, because they no longer have to worry about somebody ignoring their Sun Guard and Soak all the time. So, why do I think it's still not going to be very likely? Number one, they nerfed Cadenza. And though the nerfs aren't as big as one might seem, and even though some people might bring Cadenza simply because they like Cadenza, I feel like Cadenza's fallen from grace a bit as well. Battery also got nerfed. I forgot to mention that. Battery got nerfed as well, so it's no longer +4, it's +3 prio. Ooh. That means a lot in high levels of BattleCon as well, because now Clockwork is no longer a +1, it's now a +0. Now Hydraulics no longer a +2, it's just a +1. Like, these things matter a lot when it comes to, like, beating out attack pairs. Specific numbers of stats are really important, and Cadenza being more clashable, Cadenza having less options, Cadenza being able to beat less attacks means a lot in the game of high-level BattleCon, especially when we don't have any of the big stat monsters in the game yet, like, you know, Demetras, Hepzibah, like, these characters aren't in the game yet, so it doesn't really matter. Those small stats really, really matter. At the end of the day, though, I feel what limits the availability or the viability of heavies is Marmalie. Marmalie can destroy these characters. It's kind of sad sometimes. If Marmalie can, like, reliably go fast, Marmalie probably wins the game, because Nullifying, Magnificent, Barrier, Petri, as well as Sorceress all do really well at messing with heavies. Sorceress ignores Soak. Petrifying allows her to automatically stun people. Barrier lowers people's power. Magnificent allows her to dodge. Barrier allows her to effectively get rid of trades when opponents are doing their payout attacks. It's a very big thing. She's essentially another heavies are sad character. So I feel like the rise of Marmalie will kind of limit how heavies will go. Aside from that, you know, expect to see less Schecter, expect to see less Cadenza. More Marmalies indeed, and I think, oh my gosh, my hopes of hopes is that Rifflem goes in there and we see him make a big impact.
Well, that's at least like I said earlier, I'm hoping for 7 to be there and not be terrible, but my hopes are pretty low.
Hippie, you have to understand, man. Even if 7's a specialist, she plays like a heavy. So Marms is gonna make her real sad. It's not a 7 friendly meta.
Yeah, she's definitely heavy in that way. She's pretty slow and tradey, so.
Yeah. Okay. So, no, one more question. Who do you think will win?
Well, that's easy. Clearly, Brad's gonna win because he made the game, and therefore he's the best. So if Brad doesn't win, then we'll all be sad, and that's it. And just Brad.
It is hard to go against. It is hard to go against the creator, Bradway.
Bradway. Okay. How about you, Bird? Who do you think will win?
Ric Flair once said, to beat the man... I'm sorry. Whoa, I already messed that up. To be the man, you have to beat the man. And I think that works well here. It's really hard for me to predict against Alifant, just because of how dominant their performance was in the previous tournament. I think it's far from a lock, but if I was a gambling person, that is where my favorite to win would rest. They have so many games under their belt, they know the meta they're really thinking about their picks for this round. But if I had to say who I was rooting for, I mean, as an organizer, I'm rooting for great matches. But as Hippie and as you said, we're biased towards our favorite characters. So people who are bringing Hikaru, people who are bringing Kalistar, or people who maybe have the only, X character in the roster, I will definitely be cheering for.
In my opinion, who do I think will win? Actually, looking at the list of players here, we have some pretty strong players outside of Ali and Jugan, who were outside of Ali, Jugan, and Charles or Moon Knight. We also have people like Andy Man, the Reed God. We have ARBCO, or Arbco, who actually, you might have not known this, but was in the top 3 of a Worlds tournament. So, like, I think, took second.
I did not know that.
Third.
I'm going to have to
Yeah.
think about my predictions.
So there's that. Who else are here? I mean, some of the regulars are here. We have Mix, we have Yahweh, we have Cannon. Cannon's in here too. So interesting. So there's a lot of new faces, a lot of old faces as well. Oh, Cat is here too. Interesting.
Yeah.
So in the end, I'm probably thinking, like, if I'm going with Marco as a logical person, obviously Ali would be in there. Ali is like obsessed with this game. Like, you cannot deny how much work they put into winning. So, like, I'd have to give it to Ali. If I wanted to talk about exciting games, I'd probably look out for Andy Man, the Reed God. Andy Man's really fun to watch, mostly because Andy Man kind of plays like Ali, but also kind of plays like Tyrankin. So, in the sense that Andy Man likes making a lot of reads like Tyrankin does, but Andy Man makes reads that are measured in such a way that even should they fail, they end up in his advantage. Like, he kind of Sanathos gambits every beat, and I love watching that. And knowing Andy Man's probably going to bring his Eligor as well, and his Eligor's really fun to watch. So, watch out for Andy Man, in my opinion. Would be a really fun guy to watch. I'm not saying that Andy Man is 100% going to win, but, watch his games. It's going to be very interesting, in my opinion. I would love to keep discussing with both of you about this tournament, but we have been going over time. I did say it was going to be like 45 minutes. It's been an hour and 10 minutes. So, I think we've gone over time a bit.
Yeah. It's been great.
Well, thank you so much, and
yes.
I'm really excited. As people are playing through, please send me your replays so I can talk about how awesome you are. So do that.
All right. So without much else to say, we just want to do one thing. Please support these wonderful creators. Fast Hippie and Wind Up Bird are doing Brad's work by organizing this tournament for us. They're doing amazing work. So please support the Argent Arena. Where can they expect the videos to come up? Where can they expect the matches to come up? And where can they find the brackets and all that stuff? Obviously, Bird and Hippie would know the answer, so I defer to them.
Well, so I will be throughout the tournament posting replays on my channel on YouTube. It's Fast Hippie. I also often post it in the forums, so you can just look for the last post of me in the general room. It'll usually be a video, especially given how many replays I'll be doing. You'll probably see hopefully 1 or 2 a day during the tournament of videos I'll be posting.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds like a lot of great content coming our way.
Absolutely. Something I did in the previous tournament, as people who can check out my channel, which is Wind Up Bird, except the B is a 13 because the username was taken otherwise. I put up all the matches, but one thing that was really lacking was commentary. So definitely you should look forward to Fast Hippie's channel. I think a few matches will also be on my channel for this one, but with work, I can't really guarantee that every match is going to be put up on YouTube. If I can plug 2 other channels I believe Lynn has a YouTube channel where they upload their content with their BCO games. Lynn is in the tournament, so you should definitely check that channel out as well. And last tournament, Jugan live streamed their tournament with commentary. So I would look at Jugan's Twitch channel as well for additional stuff. To find the bracket, it is pinned on the Discord for BCO, and I'm sure it'll be in the description here if you want to look at how the tournament is progressing or make predictions if the video is on time for that.
All right, wonderful. So, without much else to say, as usual, it has been me, your host, Marco Santos, also known as Mechanic Critic, and joined me has been the first one, Wind Up Bird.
Yep, thank you very much.
All right, and the second one, Fast Hippie.
Have a good evening, everybody.
All right, tournament organizers for the upcoming Argent Arena, and as usual, don't forget your special action, and thank you, World of Indians. Thank you, and good night.